if you guys can hear me online because I was again having technical issues and hoping that people can now hear me. I'm going to be testing on my um, back on my device here and just to see if you can hear me. Let's see. Here we go. We're live. Yes. Okay. I can hear myself on my device, so it obviously works for you guys. So for anyone who's joining in, we are talking all about the Edmonton real estate market today, what happened in the last week. The active listings will show us the last 2 weeks because last week I wasn't here. I was out of the country on a missions trip, which was really fun with my family, and now we're back here. So we don't have last week's numbers because of that, but we will have this pending and solds last week. That has no issues in terms of getting that number. We're also going to talk about the first-time home buyers plan for new builds. So if you're looking at buying a new build home, this is a way you can get an extra $50,000 if you're a first-time home buyer. I'm going to talk to you, even if you're not a first-time home buyer, all about the new build market. So if you're watching and you have questions about that rebate, or if you have questions about buying new, this is the episode for you. Make sure you put in the comments what questions you might have about the GST rebate. What do you need to be as a first-time home buyer? How do you qualify for it? How do you build? What does that look like? We're going to talk all about that because we used to do a lot of new builds before COVID. It went crazy. Things have started to finally even out on the new build side. And you're seeing that in the resale side when we look at these stats every week. So let's quickly dive into these stats and then I'll go back to the new builds. So currently there are 2,543 active listings, single family homes in Edmonton. This number 2,354 is from 2 weeks ago. So you can see that the number of active listings has increased. And I've been talking about this the last month or so. Numbers have been increasing, and that is because either listings come up like ours on Friday and went pending by Sunday. They don't show up in that number because they were pending within the week. And they weren't there last week as a new sale or new listing. So we're seeing a lot of that still because we are still seeing people purchase homes and get into contract, especially with it being in June. So like we still have the ability to buy a house today and get possession, take the house by July, August, while it's still summertime. So if you take a look at the pending sales, you'll see that at the pending sales in Edmonton, 258, they have gone up in terms of sales that went under contract that had conditions. If properties went sold immediately with no conditions, it would go into the solds. So if you take a look at the sold number, you're going to see that that number has actually dropped from last week. This is not a huge drop, and it's just 1 week different. So like I said, week to week, things we look at and we talk at, but then I'm going to be recording the video about all of May and what happened in May for Edmonton's real estate market. So you'll want to check that video next Friday when we release it, so you can kind of take a look at what has the whole month been doing. And then every Tuesday when we talk about the weekly stats, you can talk about what's happening in each neighborhood. Sometimes we look at neighborhoods, sometimes we look at price points to see what's going on, and I give you a little insight on that. Now, if you take a look today, what we wanted to talk to you about is what is happening in the new build world. Now, I want to show you one more stat, which we always do, is like what has happened this year compared to last year. So last year, we still saw more sales. We saw 291 sales in the same week as this period at 237. And if you take a look at the rest of the surrounding areas, you're going to see the same result. It's going to be a little bit lower than it was last year. And if you take a look, we talked about new builds. So we're talking about the new build world and what's happening there. So let me give you a bit of insight. The new build world prior to 2020, you could buy a house cheaper than buying resale for the same house, but newer. But of course, you had to do landscaping, deck, and fence, and all that stuff. But it was still very attractive. I had a lot of clients custom build. We did a lot of changes. We did a lot of things. We got a lot of people into new homes for some really good prices. And then the crazy global pandemic hit and the prices went up, like just skyrocketed. Not only did they go higher, they also became very unpredictable because things were out of stock. Wood was going up in price. Land was going up, like all these different variables. No one had fridges. Like it was just weird. So after all that started to normalize and things became more predictable, the prices still didn't adjust. The builders were still taking advantage of people wanted to pay the extra money for new build. They were not going to go back down to what resale homes were selling for. And spoiler alert, they still aren't. Until the market really starts turning, we're not going to see that kind of market in the new build world. And people seem to be okay with that. What's interesting to me is that when people are looking for homes, they look just at new build or just at resale. And when I work with clients, we look at all facets depending on what suits the client the best, depending on what they're looking for and what they want and what's important to them. So now that the market has started to, I would say, in the last 2 years, things have been getting better to the point where it's like, okay, maybe buying a spec home. So, spec home are homes that are already built is better because those are more predictable. Those are done. You know what you're getting. You don't have to worry about things not showing up. I would say in the last few years, things are now showing up. We're back to kind of normal. The timeline and projected timeline is now starting to get more predictable again because for that a time and period of space, trades were working at the same time that they usually weren't working. Permits were taking longer, slower, faster. I don't know. It was just so crazy. And now things are starting to more normalize. I'm starting to see builders start to give incentives now too to try to encourage the buying behavior to come back. We're seeing lots not move as quickly. Like a lot that would have been really good. Why is it still sitting there? People are just not as quick to move on lots anymore. That being said, the lots have gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. So if you were looking for a what do we call normal? So if you take a look at a bungalow, like an old 1950s bungalow, a lot of those lots are 50 by 150, maybe even 40 to 50, okay? Wide. Now take that into consideration and think about the new builds. They're now at 24 wide for like their frontage, and they're getting even smaller. There's even 22s. And now if you're familiar with 18 and 22, that's actually the size of a duplex, but now they're selling them as single family and detached. So that just means that you have a duplex sized lot without the wall being attached. And so while that may be good, the pricing of these homes is what people used to pay 5 years ago for a bigger lot, 26, 28 pocket. And you're going to have a very hard time finding 26 pockets, and forget 28s. I don't even know the last time I saw a 28 pocket. The average size is 24 and 26 now. And if you're looking to build, that's something you need to consider. There are some lots now that are not zero lot lines because we have a lot more people looking for homes that are not zeros. Now, if you don't know what a zero lot line is, you need to check out my video on my YouTube channel that talks about what is a zero lot line. I actually have 2 videos like that, so just search for them and you'll be able to find what zero lot lines are. But those lots have, for example, no windows on the one side. And the biggest thing that people have noticed is the garage size. So you'll see the double car garage door, but then you're going to see a very small edge, pretty much the 2x4 between the garage door and the wall. That makes a very small garage. Now, you might have some builders say to you, oh, we can fit 2 cars, no problem. Well, you might physically be able to fit 2 cars, but can you open the door of that second car when it gets in? That's the question. So is it an oversized garage, single car garage, or is it actually a double? So on some of the quote unquote wider lots, the non-zeros, you'll see it a little bit wider. Now don't expect lots, you're not going to see a foot or anything like that, but you will see it wider. So that's the advantages of buying a wider lot. The format, the layout of the home is long and narrow, right? The older homes are going to be wider. And when I say older, I'm even talking 10, 15 years ago, they were already wider. So it's important to figure out what's important to you. Do you want all the bells and whistles and shiny new things, warranties, or are you wanting the layout? Because you can't change the layout, right? You can't change the width of your lot. Now, people have been talking about this. At the end of May, the government of Canada announced a new GST relief program for first-time home buyers for up to a value of $1.5 million. I'm going to share with you the article here. And if you're watching live and have any questions, please go ahead and ask away. I might not have all your answers, but I will definitely try to answer them. So this is an article you can clearly click on. Now, one more thing before I go back. You see, there is a GST new housing rebate even for non-first-time home buyers, but that's already been in effect. And that is something that's already put into the price of the home when you're getting the pricing. And it's this funny calculation, and it's not a easy percentage to calculate, but everyone does get it in a certain price point. When it gets over a certain price point, that doesn't apply as much anymore. But today we're talking about this for now, and then I can jump into the other stuff for the non-first time home buyer. So if you are a first time home buyer, this article gives you everything that they came out with in a few weeks ago. So May 27th, the Minister of Finance talked about this new first time home buyer GST rebate. So you will be able to get up to $50,000 of savings. And whether or not you get this in your pocket, like you have to pay first and then get it back, or you get it from the builder, the current GST rebate, how it works is no money is exchanged. You don't get money in your pocket. They just take it off of the purchase price already, and then you assign that rebate back to the government because the builder actually applies for that on your behalf, and then they get that back. So you're still getting it without all the paperwork. And I don't know all the details yet because this is fairly new. Builders are still trying to determine how this is going to look and what's going to happen. So you do need to buy a new home from a builder, or you build or hire someone else to build on land you own, right? Or lease. That's kind of strange that you would build. Like that's probably not most ideal. You want to be one of these two. And that's what we're talking about today. So if you're thinking about a new build, then that's something important to think about, right? And 50,000 is a lot of money. 50,000, depending on the builder, can give you a variety of upgrades. You can get a better lot. That'll eat up most of your rebate. You could, the exteriors will cost a lot more if you have a bigger driveway. Those are the bigger things. But then there's little things like, hey, I want to finish the stairs to the basement, which I recommend because it makes the space feel bigger. There are other things like higher ceilings in the basement, extra windows if it's possible, depending on that. So you can, that 50 grand will go quickly, but it's a nice advantage to have instead of paying that price. Now, we haven't seen builders react in terms of like, well, let's up the price. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if that happens, but so far they haven't upped the price to accommodate for this. Then you have to kind of see. There are some builders out there that are not only promoting this, they're also saying, hey, we also have some additional incentives. So make sure when you're looking at builders to understand who the builder is, because it's important for the quality and construction of build, but also the customer service you're going to get and their understanding. So to be a first-time home buyer, what does that look like? Well, you have to be at least 18 years of age. I would think that if you're 18, you're probably a first-time home buyer, or even 20, but you never know. Maybe you bought a house at 18 and you're 20 years old now, but you bought a new house 2 years ago. That won't be a first-time home buyer. You do need to be a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident. So people who are visiting or don't have one of these two are not going to be able to be qualified for this rebate. And you have to have not lived in a home that you've owned, whether inside or outside of Canada, with what does it say here? That they owned, or that their spouse or common law partner owned in the calendar year, so the same year, or then the 4 preceding calendar years. Not lived in a home that you've owned. Yeah, so like you can't own a house. Now, what does that mean why would they say that? If you are divorced and you have been divorced for over 5 years, you do qualify for first-time home buyer privileges again. So that's something you want to double check with your mortgage broker, and just see if that's something that you would qualify for, right? This is just me as a realtor talking to you about this article. Safa, I see your comment and I'm going to get to it as soon as I finish going through this article. So together with the existing rebate, you can see that there's a lot of options here. So you get 100% of the GST back if you are buying a house up to $1 million. So if you're purchasing a home for 700,000, 600 to 700 grand is what you're going to need to spend for a new build 2-story, 2,000 square foot home, roughly in Edmonton. So if that's the case, you would get all of your GST back. In the non-first time home buyers, you do get something, but you do not get 100%. It's nowhere close to that. There is a little tiny bit of a rebate. Now, if you're looking at higher than $1 million, then there then becomes a sliding scale of the percentage of how it starts to lean out. Now, some people are saying to me, well, why would a first-time home buyer need to get anything if they're buying over $1 million? Don't forget, this is for all across Canada, not just for Alberta or Saskatchewan, for example. Vancouver and Ontario, first-time home buyers could easily spend at least $1 million because that's how hard it is to get in, and that is why they've been priced out. And a lot of people have moved to Alberta because of this. This is supposed to be something that will help incentivize people to purchase again. So here it says that the rebate would allow an individual to recover up to 50 grand, or the federal part of the HST, which we don't actually have in Alberta. There's no HST. Including on lease land. To qualify for the rebate, the purchasers need to be a first-time home buyer, like we just talked about. It has to be a primary residence, so you cannot use this as an investment property. And you have to be occupying the home, right? That's part of being primary residence. And it says generally be available. So that's, to me, says to me that they haven't really defined everything, but you have to have the contract after May 27th. So if you wrote a contract May 21st, you're already building or you're moving along in the process and you're seeing this, you're like, hey, I want that. You can't go back and cancel and go back and write. It doesn't work. They're not going to allow that. And the construction does have to begin before 2031, which is only 6 years from now. It seems like a big number, but that's 6 years. And in the bigger areas like Vancouver and Ontario, I've noticed it's a very long start. Whereas in Alberta, you are building now, like in Edmonton, if you build now, you should be able to get your home by next spring, right? Like that's not a normal thing. 12 months is usually what they say because you have to include like the permit time, looking at plans, deciding all your finishings. If you're buying a spec home, obviously you're getting it right away because it's almost done or is done. So that's important to see as well. Now, I'm just going to go back here and put in the comment to see what Safa has to say so we can answer this question. It seems that Alberta continues to be an attractive target for newcomers and internal immigrants. Could this increase the home's pricing, and any evidence for the last 6 months? So, Safa, this is what has been happening, in my opinion, in the last few years. We've been seeing the prices of homes increase a lot in Edmonton, more than we've seen it before. Typically, we see a 1% to 2% increase in Edmonton, and the last few years we've seen double digits. Last year we saw a 10% increase, and I believe it was very similar to that the year before. They were predicting that for this year, but my guess is it's going to be a little under 10%. But in the last 6 months, I'm actually seeing evidence of the market starting to soften and not as many higher bid offers. There's a lot of sellers in Edmonton that are really hoping to still see these higher offers for their properties and holding out thinking, well, if I price really high, it won't matter because people from Ontario and BC still think it's a deal. But they're working likely with realtors who are looking at the solds or looking at what's happening, looking on days on market, how long the house has been sitting there, and they can do numbers too. And so I don't suspect that the pricing of homes with the resale market will continue to increase. But the new build, I'm very curious of what's going to happen. The new build market pricing has been it's been pretty similar. It hasn't like jumped up, jumped down at all. And with this GST rebate, I don't know if builders will respond by increasing their price. Would not surprise me because builders are quite greedy when it comes to taking advantage of the money that's coming in. And so for builders that are watching, maybe you're not all like that, but that's my observation. And if builders are actually allowing the buyers to take advantage of this program, they need to leave their prices the same because then it allows for the first-time home buyers to actually gain an advantage. If they do increase their prices, not only is that going to hurt, it doesn't give the advantage to the first-time home buyers, it's actually going to put the ones that are not first-time home buyers in an even higher price point to buy new build. So that doesn't help either. And we will see. Time will only tell. It's only been released a few weeks ago. And I know from my builder colleagues that the market for new builds has been a lot slower this year than it has been in the past, like significantly. When you start to see discounting, you know that the builders are in a little bit of a pain point. So if you have any other comments, I'm happy to answer them, even if you're watching this after I'm live, to talk about new builds. We can talk about new builds next week as well, to talk about what are the areas in Edmonton for new builds. Can you build new build in the city versus suburbs? What are the price point differences? How does that all work if you're looking to build? If you're coming from out of province and you're first time building, I would recommend working with a builder. If you're doing first time building and you're trying to do something from scratch, that's a huge risk. And you probably want to be living in the city. honestly, to be sure you're overseeing things. But when it comes to new builds, there are some options, and we'll take a look at some of the price points next week in terms of, hey, what are things selling for in that price point? The most popular range in the single family market right now, I would say, is the 500 range, because people are looking for 2 stories, average square foot. If you're looking for a bungalow, you can still get something in the 450, but again, depends on the neighborhood. You're probably looking at 550, 600. And so, but you're getting a big yard. The new builds are going to get a smaller yard. You're going to get smaller square footage. You're going to get new builds, but smaller garage. So there's a lot of different factors involved, and we'll take a look at that next week as I look and watch your guys' comments to see what I could do to make sure that this live post is valuable to you. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you guys next week.